Welcome back. So this video is about battening. You will have seen in a previous episode how we ventilate for cladding. So we also talked in there about battening and cross battening, which is what we're doing here. So Eddie and I are back on the job and we're going to carry on putting the next layer of battening round. So if you've seen that previous video, I talked a little bit about how we do it and gauge it out. So nothing's changed since then. One thing has changed since we've received our material. We've got all of our cladding here now. Is our corner section is completely different than we've had before. Now, quite often when we're running horizontally, we have a solid section in the corner which fits in here and our cladding runs into it like that. With this one, because we're going vertically, we're going to have a lap and then we've got a rebated section as well. Now, I might not use that rebated section, but we'll come on to that in a further video when we're actually looking at cladding and how we do the corners. But for this video, I'm just going to talk a little bit about where we're at the moment, what we're going to be doing and how we're going to go about it. So let's take the next layer of batten. It is super easy. We've got basic circular saws here to do this job with. We've also got a chop saw out, but you do not need anything more than a decent circular saw and a speed square just to keep everything nice and true. And all we'll be doing now is running a series of battens around horizontally to take our cladding, which is vertical. I've also been to look at rules and regulations surrounding cladding, and it is a real minefield. I've looked at NHBC, I've looked at building control or building regulations, I've also looked at TRADA, and I've looked at the Association for Cladding and Decking, okay, and they all recommend something slightly different. Now, there are so many rules surrounding cladding and also how close the building is to another building. For example, they talk about a metre away from a boundary in a lot of cases with regard to how you should and shouldn't do it, especially around fireproofing. So the long and the short of it in this case is that we don't need any particular fire stoppings here because of the fact that we're under a certain height. And also, for example, let's take this scenario here where we've got our cladding on our timber frame structure running up against this wooden soffit here. So if you were to use a fire break there and there was a fire breaking out in the cladding, that's going to burn anyway, okay, because that is combustible as the cladding. So there's all these grey areas. I suppose what you could do is just put it in to be safe. There's also talk about fire stopping at the end of reveals such as here, where they're saying that you should use a piece of metal, a thin piece of metal, or you should have a solid section of timber, okay? And it needs to be something like 50 by 50, which is effectively 2 battens. But again, those rules don't always apply. You've just got to make sure you check that you are following, the rules that apply to that particular building. And also, your cladding you can have treated to become flame retardant. The next job is to literally run all of these battens round, put the window reveal battens in that you've seen me talk about, which is going to be like this, and then our front battens are going to come through and into it here. So it's a very nice detail. You'll also see that I've got tyvek tape here. Now the idea of this is when our windows went in, they obviously put their foam in between it, and then what we like to do is air tape that as well, because you can still get a lot of air leaking through like a fabric of a building like that. And then the idea is our reveal will cover that tape up there, and then our cladding will be over the top of it, okay? So that's as simple as that. And it's just a really nice detail just to keep any air out. So that's another good thing to do. I'll put a link in the description of this particular tape so you can see where you get it from, okay? And it's designed for this purpose, okay? It's not just using Dutch tape or anything like that. This adhesive will stay there forever. We're gonna get on, get all of this battened out, then we'll have a look at it once it's done. we've got the top and bottom battens done, and we've also got our reveals done around the windows there. So the next thing will be fill it all in. We're just going to be putting more courses through now to speed that process up. This will be the first of 2 rods I'll probably make on this job. This first rod is one of our battens. This represents one of the uprights that we had, which went from the top to the bottom. And I'm just going to quickly space out this and use it everywhere as my rod. Now, a really simple way of setting something like this out is, there's my overall height. I'm going to mark the bottom course on here. So that represents the bottom course. I'm going to measure that mark there, 3133. We're going to divide that by 7 spaces, and it gives us 447 millimeters. Now, all I need to do is measure down 447, because I've allowed that course on the bottom, and that represents the top of that batten. The top of that batten is already there, so that will be the top batten. That's the next one. I'm just going to cut myself a rod quickly at 447, and we'll just use that to step that off all the way down. And so that's it. So there's my first course. So that will be there. This is the top course there. This is the next course there. And so on. And that's it. And it's a quick and easy way of setting everything out. And once we've got that rod, we're just going to use that on the building everywhere. So we haven't got to do any measuring or setting out. We just simply use this rod. There we go. And there. And you can see that that is exactly the length of the overall. So that's it. So then we can use that rod anywhere. We can pop it in the corner like this, and we just nail all of our battens to that. All right, but that's the basis of making a rod, and that's just going to speed things right the way up. The next thing I'm going to do is break out these battens, so I know I'm going to need a certain number. By using the rod here, I can offer it up, and I say 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 5 to get me to the head of the doorway, so I can cut all of those. They're all going to be exactly the same. That's what we want anyway, because when we put our cladding up, we want all these panels to be nice and parallel, because the more parallel it is, the easier it is to actually clad something. But that's the next job. Get these bits of batten in, and that's it. It's as simple as that.
In front of television and separates them is banter. As the governing body, can you pass any fit of person test if you're telling me you're right?
The US Open champion position so will race instead as a precaution.
Thanks for that. So we've completed our counter batten, and it's a super easy job, super quick. And you'll see we used our rod to mark the positions, and then it was just a matter of cutting sections of batten. We ran some over, we ran some in. It just saves a bit of time, being able to just cut them all off flush afterwards. It's super quick. As you saw, Ed was going around with the level earlier, clamping up the level to these upright bits as well. So it's just about setting out, using your levels. We've used a mixture of batten screws, especially close to the ends and the corners, and we've also used some 90mm galvanized ring shank nails as well. They'll go all the way through this batten, and into the stud. So let's sum up. The counter batten is done. It's one of those jobs I really enjoy, and if you sort of look at it, it's got that kind of Japanese look, you know, when you see all of their fretwork and their frameworks. It's kind of, but that's it. It's not decorative. That's just to carry our cladding. So let's just sum this up. We're using a cladding which is vertical, so that means we have to double batten because we need the airflow. The air comes from the bottom all the way up the back of the cladding and passes out of the top. One of the comments on the ventilation video was with regard to how does the air get out. So at the top there's also a gap, and you'll also notice that our parapet at the top of the extension isn't finished yet. We've got to trim that back. Once we've cladded this building, we'll trim that back, and then we'll put the actual aluminium trim all the way around. That gets welded to the alwitra, which is the flat roof membrane over the top. So that's it. We've got all of our reveals ready, all of our counter battens on, and it's really straightforward. We've got a vent here, which is actually the extractor for the kitchen. That has a grill over it. So we just add a batten in front of it to carry the ones that are coming down here. And the same where we've got our outlets straight the way above me there. We've got another batten underneath. So it's very straightforward. And coming around the corner, you can see that the building is ready for the cladding to meet the brickwork as well. And it's easy. So that is counter battening, okay? Counter battening for vertical cladding. If it was horizontal, you need a minimum airspace of 25mm, and you wouldn't be doing the second layer of battening. You'd just be having these. Now, quick questions. How far apart should we space them? This is one of those things that's really hard to establish. So speak to the people that are supplying the cladding. They generally have guidelines. The particular cladding we're using is 20mm thick, and they recommend 600 centres. But if you look at some of the regulations, they say 400 centres. We've divided ours equally all the way through, and they're round about 450 centres. So common sense will prevail. And also, the more fixings you got, the more secure your cladding is. Hope you've enjoyed that. That is counter battening for cladding. The next videos will be cladding and why we're doing what we're doing. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.